in Bangkok in February, like January, February, and then there's a very, how would you say, what's the word? Frank, let's say, Frank, English monk who's there. And he really tells it how it is, okay? I went with my teacher, who's from the eastern part of Tibet, Kham, and they're also very much like that. They're very like straight talking, you know? Do you know this about Tibetan culture? Like, for example, in Lhasa, which is in western Tibet, right? There's all this, you know, to be polite, if someone offers you something, you should say no, like 7 times. Have some tea? No. 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 Have some tea? Okay. Oh, you know? It's like this game people play, right? So anyway, there's a story, and I'll come back to this. But there's a story of someone from Eastern Tibet. Sorry. There's a story from someone from that place who went to the States to teach. And then when he came back, they asked him, oh, what'd you think of the US? And he said, oh, it's so strange. If you say no, you don't get anything. What a strange place. So anyway, my teacher really liked this English monk because he was like, you know, very straight talking. So anyway, there's this lecture. We're meeting someone. And then someone came in late and said, sorry, you know, there was traffic, right? There's traffic. And I guess for most people, it's like, okay, yeah, too bad. But you know what he said? He's like, what is with people giving the traffic excuse? You live in Bangkok, right? You know there's going to be traffic, so leave early. Isn't it? Yeah. We get this a lot in Bangalore too. I don't know how it is in Delhi. But especially in Bangalore when it rains,
yes,
there's not an adequate drainage, so like the streets get flooded, and then you know people will say, yeah, sorry, I'm an hour late. There was traffic because it rained. Then the question is, why don't you leave earlier? You know. Anyway, the point is, what was the point? Yeah, our expectations.
Is that as a country we believe in floods. So in the city we don't get floods, so we help artificially create controlling rain. What? That was a joke.
No. So anyway, the point is, right, our expectations help to create our reality. And if the higher expectations we have, then it's going to be harder for the reality to do. So instead of, we have to be a little bit skillful, right? On the one hand, we need to always see the good in people and believe in the kind of intrinsic goodness of people. That's all fine and nice, okay? But sometimes we have to think that people are just a-holes, and they're like the worst. People are the worst, right? So we sometimes need both kinds of minds, right? And if we are trying to develop loving kindness, compassion for others, then we should focus more on the kind of innate goodness of people. But when we get harmed and trying to practice patience, then we should focus how people are the worst. You with me?
I have a question. Oh, can I ask later then?
If the question is directly relating to what I've just said.
It is, but I'll wait. I'll remember.
Wow, amazing.
Patience, yeah.
I know. You should come up to Dharamsala next time. I'm kidding. Okay?
I'll hold it on.
Yeah. So, is that helpful?
Yep.
Right. So I think that's the main thing, is coming to think about when we're harmed, thinking in a different way about how we are playing a role in it. And can we get to the point, especially with being criticized, where everything that is said to us is like it's being said in Italian language, and therefore it not affect us? Can we get to that point? I think so too. Okay. Then, just on what you were saying, now, hold on. I think your name is like Sonali or something? Yeah. Really?
Oh, wow.
Wow. I surprise myself sometimes. So what she was getting at, like, our expectations of people. This is actually what Shantideva has said, and is another strategy to deal with anger and patience, right? He uses this analogy of like, the nature of fire is to be hot, right? So we don't get angry at fire. So he asks, is the nature of sentient beings to be unsubdued and harmful, right? If yes, then we shouldn't get angry. It'd be like getting angry at fire for being hot. If it's not their nature, and rather it is like, the clouds in the sky, like sometimes there are clouds in the sky, but not always, then we also don't get angry at the sky, because that's, it's not an intrinsic part of sentient beings. So we can think about that. But in my opinion, when we're harmed, we should emphasize that sentient beings are unruly and difficult, and therefore set low expectations for them. Okay. Anything else about anger?
In the beginning, sorry.
Yeah, hi.
In the beginning, you just mentioned about, what was it, to say that somebody jumps at you and you get mad, how you react, deal with that.
Somebody jumps at me?
No, jumps the queue.
Oh, yeah.
It was something very interesting you sort of pointed out.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually, when they do it, when I sort of lash back and say, how dare you, or whatever, everybody.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you say it nicely, softly,
Right.
you don't get the message across.
Okay.
I mean, so is it good to say the resistance, this thing, but not to harm yourself or?
Yeah. So, okay. Maybe not for queue jumpers, but in general,
Yeah.
we do have an obligation to prevent people from engaging in negative actions. And this is tricky for a lot of people, because actually in the Bodhisattva vows, if someone is misbehaving and we don't kind of point it out to them because we're afraid that they'll get upset with us, that's a rude transgression, But on the other hand, as I mentioned before the break, it's very difficult because people don't want to hear about their own faults, right? So we have to use the kind of skill, right? But let's just say, okay, we are in a situation where we think that saying something is going to be beneficial. We could also think that if I say it in a nice way, the message won't get across, and therefore we need to say it in a more forceful way. But we have to make sure that our motivation is still pure at that time. The example that is often used is like, a mother whose child is playing in the traffic. Then you might, if you say like, "Oh, Snookums, don't play in the traffic," then it might just like not get the message across, right? So you could even be like, don't plan the traffic, and have the, you know? But the mind is full of love. But the aspect, it can be one of anger. So it's like, you know, an actor in a play. You act like you're feeling something, but in your mind, it's not that, right? But in my experience, see, when you already are angry, then it's not the time, right? How do you say? Those times when I have said something to someone who's jumped a queue, although in my mind it's like, yeah, I gotta teach them a lesson, it wasn't that way. It was just, I'm pissed off and I want them to know about it. If I was, you know, very honest with myself. Do you know what I mean? So actually in one of the great monastic communities started by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese master, in the monastery, right, it is something good that especially the elder monks, they point out aspects of your behavior that you can improve on. And that's known, it's a Buddhist monastic community. But the thought is, if you are angry, right, if there's any anger in your mental continuum, you're not allowed to speak of someone else's faults. And then you just wait until you are in a better position to do. Does that answer your question?
So in that situation, if you are angry, you hold on for 2 minutes, take a deep breath, and then say whatever, or
give them the gift of going ahead of you in the queue.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the best thing.
Yeah.
It's like Shanti's already a bodhisattva, so she's just like, oh, go ahead. You know?
the whole world will judge you.
Right? I mean, of course, if, you know, maybe that could even be a good practice. I actually thought about this, I'm kind of strange, but I thought of going to a railway station. I don't have to buy a ticket, but just wait in line, like, and just do that all day. Like, I think that'd be quite educational. I want to do that one day. I mean, now I just buy my tickets online. Or even better, I ask someone else to do it. I'm like, okay, here's... Anyway, but, what were you saying?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Actually, at our level, for most of us, many of us want to think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna help this person see the error of their ways, that kind of thought. That's like stage 4, and we're on stage, you know, like 0.25.
The whole line thing is very interesting. So once I was in the US, and there was this thing going on in DC where you could visit all the embassies. And there was this very long line in front of an embassy. I was like, oh, what is happening here? I want to go there. So I waited for line in some time, and then the line was not moving. So I was like, let me go and see, why is it not moving? So I went up to the entrance of the embassy, which was like a long way down.
Yeah.
And there's actually no reason for a line. There was just 2-3 people who were just standing there, and then the people started just collecting behind them. So I just walked in. So
I remember you! Yeah. I mean, at the clubs, they sometimes do that.
on purpose.
On purpose, so that it looks more popular, right? It's this very strange thing about, you know, behavior. Like if the so-called, you know, herd mentality, and if we think something is popular, then it becomes popular. Anyway. Yes.
Just a comment.
Please.
What you were saying reminds me of it's a verse from the Bible, actually.
Oh, nice.
It says, you know, do not remove the splinter from your neighbor's eye until you've removed the mote from your own.
Right.
And it's like, and you know, my vision is so narrow that I don't know I have a mote in my eye.
Right.
Because I have a mote in my eye.
Right.
You know? And so trying to tell somebody how to do something is, like you said, step point too much.
Yeah. That's right, yeah.
I think just sitting down, if you're angry and you sit down, I think that makes a difference, at least for me. Like just a physical change. Because there's not much, like you said, when you've actually gotten angry, there's not much you can do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Can I answer my question?
Yes, you can.
So this issue of expectations is something I've been thinking about for the last year, and you mentioned that when you're in a position of receiving harm from someone, that's the point at which you should recognize that individuals have flaws and, or they're, you know, not to expect from people. But if you actually have started by recognizing the potential in a person, having faith in them, to make that switch if you've been harmed is really, really difficult. Like, if you actually have potential in someone, then they disappoint you because you have even just a few expectations. I don't know how you just suddenly think, okay, now I'm being harmed, now I don't have those. You know, like that actual transition is really, really difficult. So I've been trying to figure that out in practice.
Yeah.
How do you actually
Well,
deal
this is the thing, right? We're trying to build a new habit, and so it's going to be difficult. And we just have to start small and do it over a long period of time. But one thing I wanted to say a little bit related to this is, remember, what we're talking about here are strategies by which we can be patient and not get angry when we are harmed, right? But that doesn't mean that in general, then, you know, people can do whatever they want to us and that be justified or acceptable, right? So these are more strategies to prevent us from getting angry. But if you are in, I don't know, a relationship, then you, or whatever, you have employees, or in the family, or even in society, there are certain standards of behavior that we have, and it's not about then, you know, dismissing all of that. But it's when people don't meet those standards, how to prevent your mind from freaking out. You know? Does that help?
Yeah, no, that helps.
Because of awareness of harm,
Mm-hmm.
the second problem arises.
Mm-hmm.
If you are saying one should expect that it's not perfect, but that's when then anxiety comes up. Because you know there's possibility of harm.
Huh.
So then how do you deal with that second emotion?
Okay. Shall I move on to anxiety? Yeah? We have enough of anger? Have we slayed the dragon of anger? Really? Okay. We can maybe come back if there's more stuff about anger tomorrow. Let's go on to anxiety. Thank you, Rita.
For switching the subject?
Yeah, no, it's good. We can have a natural transition that way. Okay. So, it's interesting to myself and many others, as you look in the, so I'm answering your question in general, but I'm also just launching into anxiety now, okay? Well, launching into anxiety. That doesn't sound good. But in any case, when you look in the traditional list of all the mental afflictions, fear or anxiety isn't on the list. In both Vasubandhu's Abhidhamma Kosha, as well as Arya Sanga's Mumba Kuntu, anyway. And this is very interesting to me and other observers, because this is like one of the main afflictions that is facing people in this era, right? So I once saw an explanation, because not all anxiety is negative, not all fear is negative, right? In fact, when we cultivate the awareness of our impending death, right, it can be a wholesome fear, right? It can then help us to reprioritize our life, and then it can bring about something good. Okay? So not all fear is bad. Just like not all desire is bad. Right? The desire that others be free from suffering, the desire to attain enlightenment, the desire to go on retreat and do our practice. All these things are okay, they're good, and we should cultivate them. So with fear, there are two things, right? There's a fear that is, based in reality, and then if we take the appropriate measures to kind of combat an unfavorable situation in the future, that can be a good thing, right? But then there's other fears that are extremely irrational, and they're based on, again, like all afflictive emotions, they're based in distorted ways of thinking. Okay? So, one thing, again, in the moment, we employ the same strategy. Just notice where the anxiety is coming from, and then not identifying with it, but watching it as a third-party observer, and then letting it dissipate on its own. That's, again, the general strategy that we employ. But, well, as Shantideva famously says in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, if there's something you can do about a situation, why worry? If there's nothing you can do about a situation, why worry? You get that? So, here, whatever it is that we're worrying about, then you should think, not just about the worry, but think, okay, well, what can I do about it? Identify those things. And then do it. Do that. And really start to do it, whatever it is, and do it. Because oftentimes, we get anxiety, and then we spend all of our time worrying about something, and then we don't even take those steps to that would help that situation, right? So that's one. And then, after we've identified all the things we can do and do them, then it's a matter of just, all right, I've done my best, okay? Now here, one thing that I found a little bit helpful is to think of the worst case scenario and then assume that it's going to happen and become comfortable with it, and then you can move back, right? So for example, last time I had to apply for an Indian visa, right? Last time I was applying for an extension in India, okay? I love the Department of Home Affairs, but in any case, you need all these different letters and signatures, and from this department and from this police department, you need like a whole stack of papers. And then, if you don't get all of them, then you're automatically, have to leave. So then, I applied from this, for this one letter from the Department of Ministry of Home Affairs here in Delhi, and it had been like 3.5 months and it hadn't come yet, And so I was so nervous about that. And then there's all this like, oh my gosh, is it gonna come? So then, at one point, I just was like, okay, well, if it doesn't come, then what? I have to leave. And then, I go back to the US and then I apply for a new visa there. Okay, That's not so bad, right? And then when you get comfortable with that worst case scenario, then, you know, it's like, how do you say? It loses its, its power on you, right? Because if you think then the worst case is not so bad, right? And then you can stop worrying about it. Then of course, you know, what are the things I can do? Then you do those. I think that's helpful. Okay. Now, okay. The other thing with anxiety is we have a very irrational view of probability, right? When it comes to things we get afraid of. And this is actually very interestingly described in a great book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Yeah. And so, you know, he did this study, and he's Israeli. And then he looked, and in Israel, in whatever year, 2005, there were maybe 6 or 7 times that a bus had been bombed. I don't know the exact ratio, right? But yeah, some number of times that there was a bomb on a bus, okay? But then, you know, you do the math, then it's like, however many people died of that, and then you divide by how many people ride in a bus all year, right? And it's like, actually a minuscule number. It's like, you know, 0.0023% or something, like ridiculously small, okay? But what happens is, every time there is a bus blast, it gets on the front page of the newspaper, right? And so, if you ask people, you know, what is the likelihood of being, you know, killed in a bomb on a bus, you know, they did a survey of the people, and it's like a very high number relative to the reality. Do you know what I'm saying? So we have a kind of a cognitive bias towards those what's that?
Negative possibilities.
To the negative possibilities, because when we hear about them, every time they happen, we hear about them. It's like that. And it's almost like our news sources also play a little bit of a role in this, because that's what gets the eyeballs. That's what people are interested in, you know? But in reality, I mean, it's like people, many people are also afraid of flying on planes, right?
Vertigo.
What's that?
Vertigo.
Well, not just vertigo, but they think they're going to crash, right? And when you look at the statistics again, statistically speaking, flying on a plane is many, many, many times safer than driving in a car. You know? Yet, every time there's a plane crash, it makes the front page. And so, in our mind, we have a kind of, unrealistic sense. Okay? Then the other thing, just with probabilities, right? It's like, like if you flip a coin, right? Then getting heads is 1/2. Then getting 2 heads in a row is like 1/2 times 1/2. So it's 1/4 chance. And then 3 times in a row is like 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, 1/8, right? So every, probability kind of like multiplies, right? So the more events, the less likely that all of them would occur together. You guys with me? Mm-hmm. All right. So sometimes, I've known this for myself. It's like there's this thing that if this unlikely event, plus this unlikely event, plus this unlikely event, plus this unlikely event, plus this unlikely event, if all that happens, I'm totally screwed, right? And that is true, but it's like, each of those things is so unlikely in and of themselves that all of them together is also extremely unlikely. You know, I was thinking just with my this application. It's like, oh, what if, you know, it got lost in the mail? What if this, what if that, you know? It's like, okay, it's true, but it's probably not the case. And anyway, it's out of your hands, right? So anyway, that strategy is, focus on the things you can, and then do those things, and then the rest, don't worry. Yeah? Then, so that's one thing, just general anxiety, fear about future events happening, right? Then there's like social anxiety, yeah? Social anxiety. What do we get afraid of? You know, we're at the party, and you know, we only know one person there, and then it's like, oh, do these people like me? You know? Does this happen to us? Social anxiety? We don't like being in crowds of people we don't know? Yes?